My dear loyal brothers, we congratulate you on the blessed festival. God willing, you will live to see a great festival for the Islamic world. There are numerous signs that, as the source of sacred constitutions for the United Islamic States, the all-wise Qur'an will prevail fully over the future and bring about a grand festival for all humankind. Secondly, no doubt remains that the Risale-i Nur and the Nur students are under the protection of divine providence, for despite the sensitivity of the times, with their arbitrary laws and interminable obduracy, they have been able to cause 1% of harm to the Nur students. The plan was to preoccupy 600 of the active Nur students with court cases, but only 6 of them were subject to punitive treatment. In fact, as described by the Nur champion, 25 courts could find nothing indictable in hundreds of thousands of copies of the Risale-i Nur's treatises and hundreds of thousands of Nur students. It is decisive evidence that these numerous courts admitted that they could find nothing reprehensible in the Risale-i Nur. For just as such courts as Istanbul and Afyon did not convict me, although what I said in them was completely opposed to their sensitive and easily misinterpretable laws, so too they could find nothing indictable in the Risale-i Nur, although it confines the unjust laws of civilization. This demonstrates clearly that the truth contained in the Risale-i Nur has defeated those who contest it and induced the law courts to be fair and just. Divine providence preserves the Risale-i Nur, which is a miracle of the Qur'an, from its opponents. Its adversaries' attacks make it shine even brighter and are means of its spreading. Our Master says, although those government officials who have had dealings with me these 28 years have always oppressed me, the police have never troubled me. In fact, some of them have been protective. I am now pronouncing the reason for this, which is that it is now realized that the Nur students and the Risale-i Nur work to secure public order and security like moral police and in secret fashion, and that with their admonishments in regard to belief, they lodge a prohibitor in people's hearts. Evidently, the police perceived this and always appeared friendly to us. The underlying meaning of this is as follows. In accordance with a fundamental law of the Qur'an, so that no harm should come to 19 innocents because of 10 criminals, the Nur students and the Risale-i Nur prevent those who try to disturb public order. In consequence of this, despite the existence of awesome non-material destructive forces struggling to disturb public order, and despite their endeavoring to do this in this blessed country to a greater degree than in France, Egypt, Morocco, and Iran, the chief reason they have been unable to do so is that, as a moral force for the police, 600,000 copies of parts of the Risale-i Nur and 500,000 Nur students have withstood that spiritual and moral distraction. The police have felt this, for contrarily to the officials these last 28 years, they have behaved towards the Risale-i Nur fairly and kindly. Our Master also says, more than the Hojas and even the Sufis, the duty of members of the police force demands that they should be God-fearing, preserve themselves from serious sins, and perform their religious obligations. There is intense need for this, for then they may carry out to the letter their duties connected with public order and security against the forces wreaking moral and spiritual destruction. The Nur students in attendance on him. This letter, which our Master wrote long ago, was added to the court decision since it answers fully the accusations of securing personal influence and exploiting religion for political ends. It is only the truth that speaks. It is proved in the Risale-i Nur that sometimes justice is manifested through tyranny. That is to say, for some reason a person suffers an injustice or is the victim of oppression, or he is visited by a calamity and is convicted for a crime and sent to prison. It is unjust and the sentence is unwarranted, but the event is a means to the manifestation of justice. Divine determining inflicts the sentence on the person through an unjust hand because he deserved it or for some other reason, causing him to suffer the calamity. It is a sort of manifestation of divine justice. I am thinking now, for 28 years I have been made to move from the province to province and from town to town. I have been dragged from court to court. Of what crime do those who inflict this persecution and torment on me accuse me? Exploiting religion for politics. But why have they been unable to prove this? Because in reality there is no such thing. For months and years one court was trying to find me guilty and convict me. It gave up and another court opened proceedings against me concerning the same case. For a while it pursued the matter and pressurized me, making me suffer every kind of torment. It too could conclude nothing, so I gave up. Then a third court fastened itself onto me. In this way I have been dragged from misfortune to misfortune and from calamity to calamity. 28 years of my life have passed thus. Finally, they themselves have understood that there is absolutely no truth in the crime they accuse me of. Do they intentionally accuse me, or have they been carried away by some groundless fear? Whether intentional or unfounded, I know with complete and utter certainty that I have no connection whatsoever with such a crime. All those who are fair-minded know that I am not a person who would exploit religion for politics. In fact, my accusers know this. So why do they persist in persecuting me? Why have I been the object of such continuous oppression and persistent torture although I am innocent? Why have I been unable to be saved from this misfortune? Is this situation not opposed to divine justice? For 25 years I could find no answer to these questions, but now I have understood the true reason for their persecution. I say with utter regret that my crime was to make my serving the Qur'an the means to my progress, material and spiritual, and to my attainment of perfection. I understand this now and feel it, and I offer Almighty God 1,000 thanks that for long years outside my will powerful immaterial obstacles prevented me from making my serving belief a means to my spiritual and material progress, and to my being saved from hell and torment, and even to my eternal happiness. They prevented my making it a tool of anything at all. These deep-seated feelings and inspirations left me in amazement. I was being prevented both in my spirit and heart from trying to attain spiritual rank and the happiness of the hereafter, which everyone wants, and from taking such a way, although it is a lawful right and causes no harm to anyone. I was shown that, driven by the innate desire for knowledge, I should only serve belief for God's pleasure alone. For at this time, a way of teaching the Qur'an is necessary which, having no other purpose at all, can be the tool of nothing and will effectively impart the truths of belief together with the worship which is innate to man, to those who do not know them and need to learn them. These have to be taught in a way that will save belief in this confused world and afford certainty to the obdurate, that is, in such a way that they are exploited for nothing. Only in this way can absolute disbelief and obstinate misguidance be smashed, and everyone gain complete certainty. At this time, in these conditions, this certainty may be gained through knowing that religion is being made the tool of nothing, be it personal, worldly, for the hereafter, material or immaterial. For an individual person who confronts the awesome collective personality of a religion proceeding from certain covert organizations and political societies cannot dispel the doubts it gives rise to, even if he is at the highest spiritual rank. For the ego and soul of an obdurate person who wants to believe may say, with his brilliance and extraordinary spiritual rank, that person has deceived us, and he will therefore continue to doubt. And let thanks be to Almighty God that for 28 years, being accused of exploiting religion for politics, divine determining dealt me blows purely, justly, through man's oppressive hand, so that involuntarily I exploited religion for nothing personal. It was warning me, beware, do not exploit the truth of belief for your own person, so that those needy for belief may understand that it is only the truth that speaks. Let all whisperings of the soul and diabolical suggestions cease, let them be silent. This, then, is the reason for the fervor the Risale-i Nur has given rise to in people's minds, like the towering waves of mountainous seas, and for the effect it has on their spirits and hearts. It is nothing else. Thousands of scholars have published hundreds of thousands of books about the same truths that the Risale-i Nur discusses, and more eloquently, yet they have been unable to halt absolute disbelief. If in these extremely difficult conditions the Risale-i Nur has been successful to an extent in the struggle against absolute disbelief, the reason is this: there is no Sa'id. Sa'id has no power and no authority. It is only the truth that speaks, the truth of belief. Since the light of the truth has an effect on hearts needy for belief, let not one Sa'id be sacrificed, but thousands. Let all the tribulations and oppression I have suffered these 28 years, all the torments to which I have been exposed, all the calamities I have endured, let them all be forgiven. All those who have persecuted me, moved me from town to town, insulted and wanted to have me convicted due to their various accusations, those who have readied places for me in the prisons, I have forgiven all of them. And I say to just divine determining, I desert those compassionate loves of yours. For if like everyone I had taken away thinking of myself, which is completely licit and harmless, and if I had not sacrificed the effulgences, material and spiritual, which I felt, I would have lost this supreme immaterial strength present in serving belief. I sacrificed everything, material and immaterial. I submitted to all the misfortunes. I patiently endured all the torments. It is because of this that the truths of belief have spread everywhere. It is because of this that the Risale-i Nur School of Knowledge has raised hundreds of thousands and perhaps millions of students. They will now continue to serve the cause of belief, not departing from my way of sacrificing everything, material and immaterial. They will work for God's pleasure and God's pleasure alone. Many of my students have suffered every kind of tribulation, torment, and oppression together with me. They have undergone severe tests. I want them to forgive all the injustices and those who have wrongfully persecuted them, like me. For unknowingly, without comprehending the mysteries and profound manifestations of divine determining, they have served our cause and assisted in the unfolding of the truths of belief. Our duty consists only of seeking their guidance. I recommend that none of my students harbor even the slightest desire for revenge against those who have persecuted and oppressed us, and that in the face of them they work loyally and steadfastly for the Risale-i Nur. I am very ill. I have no strength now to either write or speak. Perhaps this will be my last words. Let the Risale-i Nur students of the Madrasa Zehra not forget this testament of mine. My brothers, this is a truth of the greatest importance which was composed due to as spiritual admonishments, and which, if you deem it appropriate, may be given to the Prime Minister and religious deputies. Introduction. I have given up politics for nearly 40 years, and most of my life has passed as a sort of recluse and I am not busy with social and political life, and therefore did not see a serious peril. Recently, I have perceived that a danger is preparing the ground to cause serious harm to both the Islamic nation and to this country and Islamic government. I am compelled therefore to explain 3 points which have been imparted to me as a warning for the politicians who work for the good of Islamic nationhood and sovereignty and this country, and for those who zealously work for the human community. First point. Although I have not listened to the newspapers being read, for the last year or two I have heard the phrase accusations of political reaction being repeated over and over again. I listened attentively with the old Sayyid's head and saw quite clearly that the coward enemies of Islam who exploit politics for irreligion are making iniquitous accusations not of being Muslim or being zealously religious or having powerful belief, but of exploiting religion for political ends and even utilizing politics for religion and making them subservient to it. Those coward enemies who strive to revert to one of the most savage, primitive fundamental laws of humankind and have donned the mask of patriotism in completely unjust fashion brand with accusations of political reaction and imagined to be harmful for the country, those striving to reinforce this Islamic government with the moral strength of Islam and to secure for it 400 million true brothers as a reserve force and to save it from begging to certain tyrannical Europeans. The time has come to explain, in the second point, the chief of many examples, as a barrier against the awesome injustices of this century. There are 2 sorts of reactionism which have 2 fundamental laws as their source. The first is true reactionism, which is political and social. Its fundamental law has led to much abuse and tyranny. The second is the basis of true progress and justice, but it is given the name of reactionism. Second point. Those who attack religion in the name of civilization and a fundamental law remaining from the primitive, savage eras of mankind are reverting to similar savagery and primitiveness due to reactionism. That ghastly, barbaric fundamental law, which annihilates humanity's welfare and justice and general peace, is now wanting to infiltrate our wretched country. Strife is appearing as though the beginnings of obdurately biased partisanship are being inculcated. The fundamental law is this. Due to the mistake of a single member of a group, or of a movement or tribe, all the members of those groups are condemned and falsely imagined to be enemies and responsible. One mistake becomes thousands. Brotherhood and citizenship and love and fellow feeling, which are the foundations of unity and unanimity, are overturned. Yes, obdurate opposing forces that clash lost their power. Then, due to the weakness arising from this loss of power, the nation and country cannot be served justly. The forces are obliged to give material and other bribes, and in order to find supporters for themselves, irreligious currents utilize the cruel, savage, primitive fundamental law mentioned above. In the face of this, in accordance with the revealed sacred verse, no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, which is pure justice, is a fundamental law of the Qur'an which ensures true love and brotherhood and saves this country from this danger. It says, no one can be held responsible for another's fault. No one may be said to share in a crime committed by his brother even, or his tribe or group or party. If he supports him somehow in the crime, it is a sin for which he will be answerable in the next world, not in this world. If this fundamental law is not promulgated swiftly, human society will fall to the very lowest of barbaric reactionism, equal in destruction to that perpetrated during the 2 world wars. The following is the basis of the politics of those wretches who give the name of reactionism to such sacred fundamental laws of the Qur'an as the above and accept the fundamental law of barbarism and savagery, individuals may be sacrificed for the good of the community. Personal rights may be disregarded for the welfare of the country. Minor injustices may be ignored in the interest of state policies. It considers permissible the killing of 1,000 people because of one criminal. Thousands of innocents may be thrown into misery due to one man being wounded. On such pretexts, 200 men being lined up and shot is overlooked. In the First World War, 30 million wretched human beings were wiped out due to the errors of 3,000. There are thousands of such examples. So, to label reactionary and leave under suspicion those self-sacrificing believers and students of the Qur'an who oppose the awesome injustices of that barbaric reactionism and who strive to secure truth, justice, unity, and brotherhood in line with the fundamental law taught by the verse, and no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, which is one of hundreds of the Qur'an's fundamental principles, resembles preferring the accursed Yazid's tyranny to the justice of the Caliph Umar. It resembles preferring a cruel, savage law of the Inquisition to the above-mentioned law of the Qur'an, which is the means to humanity's highest progress and justice. The politicians working with the Islamic government for the welfare of this country should hold these facts in view. The government will otherwise be weakened with the clashing of 3 or 4 obdurate opposing forces. Then, since its weakened power, with which it has to secure the country's interests, will be insufficient to preserve its authority, even as a despotism and public order and security, it will pave the way to sowing the seeds in this blessed Islamic country of the French Revolution. One feels consternation at such a possibility, since, by reason of the weakness and powerlessness arising from disunity, extraordinary non-material bribes are being given in the face of the foreigners' policies and their insignificant temporary aid. It gives the idea that no importance is being given to the brotherhood of 400 million brothers and the way of millions of forefathers. Supposing themselves to be compelled to maintain power through so much wastefulness and fat salaries, bribes are given so that no harm comes to public order and politics, and the nation's poverty is disregarded. Most definitely, it is absolutely essential that the politicians in this country should give gratis and as a harmless bribe to the 400 million Muslim brothers who in the future will form the United States of the world of Islam, 10 times the political and non-material bribes they now give to the West and the foreigners. To do so would be in the interest of this country and nation and Islamic State. One such acceptable, necessary, most advantageous, permissible, and obligatory bribe is to take as guiding principles the sacred, fundamental laws taught by the following verses. Indeed, the believers are brothers. Hold firm to God's rope all together, and be not divided among yourselves, and no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, and fall into no disputes, lest you lose heart and your power depart. The third point has been postponed for now. Said Nursi. Postscript. My brothers, 3 things have led to the severe warning you received previously being changed. The first, the Nur hero Husrev saying that 25 courts have ruled that the Risale-i Nur contains nothing incriminating. The second, one of the Risale-i Nur's heroic lawyers saying that it would be appropriate if the vehement words were toned down, since the Ankara government is not opposed to Said. The third, a sign that the wrongful oppression of the Nurjus is being lessened and rebuffed is that although, according to certain reports, there was a plan to send to court at least 600 active and capable Nur students due to Afyon court saying that there were 600,000 of them, and on the pretext of Malatya incident, only 1 out of 12, and then out of 6 was given a 1-year sentence. It was in consequence of this that the severe expressions were toned down.